Welcome back, everyone, to another conversation. We're here speaking with Nina Foxx, and she's doing a lot of amazing things. But before we get to this conversation, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, all our listeners, the amazing speakers, the panelists joining us on this journey. Thank you to Auburn Avenue Library and our sponsors, Kindle Direct Publishing, Constellations, Harlequin, Ingram Spark, the Atlanta Writers Club, and Libro FM. Thank you all for supporting our efforts to amplify stories. Now make sure y'all following us, Black Writers Weekend, on all the platforms. Tag us in your posts and use the hashtag once again, Black Writers Weekend. All right, y'all. We got yet another. We've had a lot of amazing speakers who are all doing something really amazing, and I'm excited for this next conversation because it's like yet another unique story. A lot of journeys. Today we're speaking with Nina Foxx, who is a storyteller whose stories just really just manifest themselves in the novels, plays, films, fiber. There's a lot. Oh, there's a lot going on there. She makes things and always has projects going on in all different areas. She really follows the things she loves, leading with curiosity and just exploring life. She travels to feed her story. She teaches yoga for conferences, events, and online multiple times a week. She specifically specializes in shavasana, is which is that.
Shavasana is my favorite pose
Oh, it's a favorite
it's
pose.
like when you lay down at the end.
Okay, let's correct that. Let's correct that. She teaches yoga. She knows all the poses, a lot more than me, as you could tell. Um, and in addition to yoga, she's authored 20 narrative publications, written 3 plays, a few films, authored several industrial design patents. She works a day job in tech, not because she has to, but because she loves it. She's a frequent speaker at conferences about being a blurred black girl nerd, black in technology, women's health, and other topics. Welcome, Nina Fox, to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really glad to be here.
Me too. I'm glad you're here as well. I'm glad you're here as well. And not just here on the podcast, but speaking at Black Writers Weekend. How does that feel? Let's start there. How does it feel?
Well, it's good. Look, it's been a minute because pandemic. But it's good to be back out there talking to people. I get a lot of energy from people. Although I stay away from people, we all been staying away from people, right? It's good to share my story, to learn from other people, but it's also exhausting.
Mm, I feel that. Do you feel like you're more of a, because you feel, it seems like you're very outgoing, right? Going after everything you love, but are you someone who just loves to kind of be back at home after a
So
while?
I am. I think I'm an extroverted introvert. I
Mm,
will be extroverted when I have to. Like when I wrote my first book, I just wanted to write a book. But no one told me that I would have to talk about it in front of people. And so, like that first book, I was invited on a book club conference, and I was featured as an up and coming author. And on that conference, there were people like Eric Jerome Dickey, rest in peace, Lolita Files, like all of these people that I looked up to, who were the 5 big main authors, and they were such fabulous speakers. I was like, whoa. But when it was my turn, I was like, I'm Nina Fox. This is my book. This is what it's about. I was done. And then I paid some attention. It was a class that was theater for writers. I studied these people that I wanted to emulate. I think Victoria Christopher Murray was on that as well, and took this class, Theater for Writers, and learned how to speak. And even if you don't write, I believe in theater. Obviously, I also write plays, but even if you don't work in those areas, those are skills that help you in the corporate world as well. Because I end up giving a lot of presentations at work, and it's totally. If I had to do it 20 years ago, I would have been totally different.
mm. Very interesting. So you were able to, was it like looking back, you see, okay, yeah, these skills were kind of transferable, or was it in the moment like, oh, hold on, I could do this. Hold on, this is just the same as over here.
No, it's a looking back thing. Because I was like, I run up because you believe when you write your first book, or most people believe, if I write it, they will come. If I stand in front of the bookstore, they're gonna buy the books from me, and that's not true. You have to engage with people and just then going on the road. I had book signings in small bookstores, big stores, Barnes and Noble in the front, Barnes and Noble in the back. And when you talk to people, you will sell more books. And we went through this whole thing. Oh, that's a black book because it's a black author, which is we can talk about that for days. But I stood in stores, and I didn't care if you were green. I was going to sell you a book because I was going to talk to you, and maybe you were buying it because you wanted me to leave you alone. It's a skill that you definitely grow if you want to tell. You need to pitch your work. You need to tell people why they should buy your work, and especially in our community. I think a lot of times people buy you, but they can't know you if you don't talk about your work and why you wrote it and what you do.
Mm. How so you went to write a book, your plan was to write it, publish it, put it out there and they will come, but then you're learning the hard way like I gotta be out there. You
Yeah,
gotta be out
yeah,
there. And you say you're an extroverted introvert, but that introvert part is very strong, right?
yeah.
Very
Oh, yeah, it
strong.
is. Well, it's funny because I went. The pandemic is not over, but a lot of people believe
Mm-hmm.
it is, and you get invited to things, and I just kind of like really staying in my house. But every now and then you get the, oh, let me go out and do this thing to get like you. I'm like a battery. My battery gets filled up, and I go back home. I'm good with that. There's some value to. I mean, you you almost get stuck on go, especially if you have kids and there's things you have to do in communities and volunteering and work and all those things. And the pandemic stopped all that. And some of that was good because some of it needed to go, but you don't know how to set the boundaries and say no. So you make, and I would be exhausted every November. Is that not right? Because I would go on in November. I was like, I can't do this. I have to quit. I need to just stay home for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So it forced me to quit some things. Forced a lot of people to quit some things.
I definitely resonate with that because the pandemic when it first started, it was like a nah, sit down. You're
Yeah.
doing a lot, and it was actually good to help me to realize what my own boundaries were.
Right.
I love that you mentioned the battery. Um, um, just being drained and having to go refill it as well.
Yeah.
In those early times where you were kind of promoting your book, sharing more about who you are, how long did it take you to get to the point where you realized like you had a system in place on how you did it?
Um, you, well, I'm a researcher. That's what I do. I was researching other authors to see how they did and what they shared. There were things they shared and things they held back. I had to discover what my things were. So I would say it took me a minute, but then you also have to know when to change it because every audience is different, every book is different. You have to read the room and know what's going to work and what's not
Mm-hmm.
because you're not, the audience is different.
Mm-hmm. I feel that. Um, Another thing I think is interesting. So, written multiple patents. So, one, just congratulations. That's
Thank you.
really cool. I think I love seeing black people in different types of places and actually writing the patents. Like I feel like that's something we don't always hear. It happens. We don't always hear about it. For you, which process came first? Was did the book come first or did the patent come first?
I think I wrote both patents before I quit my job to stay home. Well, I quit my job and then became a writer because I wasn't good at staying home. Um, it was part of my job. It was part of the job. It's what you do. By the nature of what I do, I help people rebuild things that they've already built. Where I'm like, that's not going to work. And let me tell you why. I study people. I'm a psychologist by trade, an engineering psychologist. I guess it's my technical thing. I work in usability engineering. So in that rewrite, sometimes, especially when I started out in hardware, and when you're working in hardware and the associated things that go with it, you rebuild. You say, "This is people. I saw this problem, so it has to be this way." You sketch and you rebuild, and so the company patents that for you. And you get, depending on where you work, you get rewarded or one way or the other. Some people just give you a block of glass. Some people give you money. It's a common thing in tech, or it used to be a lot more common, at least for people in my role, than it is now. I think.
Mm. Okay, so you've ventured into a lot of spaces, just helping companies and people grow just with the work that you were doing, and you quit your job, sat home, and realized like, oh, okay, I can't
Yeah.
just do
So
this.
there were a lot of
Well,
factors that went into me quitting my job. I had small children. The dynamics of managing then a family with two people with high-powered jobs. Some people struggle with that. So I quit my job and I was like, I'm just gonna stay home and be a lady who lunch. And I talk about this all the time because in my head, in the community that I lived in, it was like in the tech boom. There were a lot of people. I was in Austin who were doing things. A lot of smart people, smart women were choosing to stay home for one way or the other. Also, the economy then was if you had two people making over a certain amount, there was what they called the marriage tax. You got it cost more money by the time I factored in gas and clothes and sitting and housekeepers and everything else. It was costing me money to go to work, even though I made a very decent salary then. So it was about 3 weeks. I was like, I've got to do something. I needed a routine. I actually had started writing my first book when I was in grad school, writing my dissertation, and I hated my topic by the time I got there. So I would write for 30 minutes a day something fun. It was just a fun story, and I would email it to friends. That was like the early days of email too. Personally, like I would email it to friends, and they were like, "Haha, that's funny." So, but before long, and then after 30 minutes of that, I would segue into writing my dissertation. What I was supposed to be doing was like my reward. And before I knew what happened, I had 400 pages of fun and not as much dissertation. So I just put it in, I got a job, put it in the drawer, and then I happened into an amazing community of writers and artists in Austin. I met a woman who was a poet and she'd gone to school to be a writer, and she was just a really beautiful spirit. Shout out, she is Shabazz. But she took me to a writers conference because you go here and you pitch to writers, and I just started pitching this idea that was in the drawer and didn't think much about it. And at the same time, I'm working, and then when I quit, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to work on this and make it a book. And so then I learned about publishing and what it would take, and just this artist community, and I realized that nobody was going to tell me what was good. So I didn't want to be rejected. I wasn't going to go for the 18 rejections or 97 rejections, although I did do some querying. And then it was not digital. You actually had the mail
Oh wow.
packages. And I just decided to do it myself. And I hired a book consultant, which I do now. But I help other people do the same thing. And wrote the book. And this was before Ingram Spark. So wrote the book, started a company, ordered printing from somewhere in the Midwest, had the thousands of books shipped to my house. Then I hired everybody. I'm good at hiring everybody. I had my 3-year-old repacking books to send to the Amazon distribution centers. You would have to send them all over the country. I actually had an an Ingram account, and was distributing other people because they weren't letting a whole bunch of people do it. But I was in this time they were like buying up all the black authors.
Hmm.
We were hot commodities. Um, and sold something like 5,000 books out of the trunk of my car in 8 months.
Oh wow.
And so, what a couple of the agents that I'd queried when I was in my queried process, and I set up my own book tour. The name of that book was Dipping My Spoon, and I went to Book Expo, which was the big trade show, and they used to have a luncheon for Black booksellers,
Hmm.
and I walked around with press kits with chocolate dip spoons, and they just laughed so much. And then I set up book tours from that, and at the independent bookstores, because we had a lot of independent bookstores all over the country, even here in Atlanta,
Hmm.
everywhere. And people were calling me asking me to come because I found ways to mail these chocolate covered spoons to them in the press kits without melting. And let me tell you, you haven't lived until you traveled in Texas with a cooler full of chocolate dip spoons, and you arrived to give them out at your book signing, and not a one has melted. But some of the agents that turned me down, I remember this one agent in Dallas. I look up, and it was very easy to spot because it was a room full of Brown's faces and this one person in the back. And he had turned me down. And he was like, "Oh, I want, if you're still interested." And I was like, "No." Because I'd already gone through the process, right? And I was already out there. But eventually, I wrote a second book, and I was going to do the same thing. And someone who read the book took it and sent it to an agent in New York who used to be the president of Dutton Books. And she called me and says, "I can sell you." So she took like 3 weeks to convince me because by this point I'm realizing I have some control issues because I have control over everything. And she sold the next 7 books for me, and so she
Hmm.
was my agent until she died. And so that was really how. And she sold a book a year for 7 years, and that
Wow.
really was my entree into figuring it out how the whole thing worked. So I've been on both ends. Self published, Major House. Those books were published by HarperCollins. Um, Small press, I've been there too. I've been in anthologies. And this last book that I just did, I decided to self publish again.
Mm.
But I don't have to, now with the print on demand technologies, you don't have to do the same thing in terms of get all the books shipped to you. Although I'm using Ingram Spark, I'm also using Amazon for book. I want to be in bookstores. A lot of people don't know that. They think they could just use Amazon, but a lot of bookstores, especially indies, won't order you for you to do events
Mm.
because it's print on demand. They got to know it's there. So I had to do Ingram as well, which is great. That's why I'm here today. So it's
Wow.
good. Yeah. And also, after so many books, I have a following. I've run a writing retreat. People know about that. When the book, I guess the Charleston Library found out about the book on NetGalley.
Mm-hmm.
They reached out to me because my book takes place outside of Charleston, and wanted me to come. So before the book was even published, I had events booked. So
Where are you from?
originally, I'm from New York.
New York? Okay, I'm from Charleston, so I was like, hold on,
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Okay, I gotta
Well, I
make sure I
spent
got
some
that
time
right.
on Kiowa Island with friends. So
Okay,
the book takes place in Kiowa Island. It's a
gotcha.
mystery.
Okay.
So, and having been there, like when I went back to grad school again and got an MFA, I was really interested in how writers from other experiences other than mainstream use figurative language to impart detail so that you could feel like you've been to an unfamiliar place. And for people, writers of color, that's what we do because we may live across the street, but our culture is so different that you may not be able to fathom it if you're from the mainstream. So I did a lot of studying of African writers and Caribbean writers and understanding the language that we use to paint that picture. So when I came up with the idea for the Queens of Kiowa series is what it's called. I wanted people to experience the barrier islands as this mysterious place. A lot of it used to be plantations where shipwrecks happened, enslaved escaped, and this whole culture developed outside of mainstream American culture, and then set a modern day story there and all the layers of these people who have corporate jobs or had corporate jobs and they're coming back south to buy homes or vacation homes in a place that's quickly gentrifying that used to be plantations and all of the layers of meaning and nuance that are there as Black Americans.
Mm,
So that's kind of how I got to Queens of Kiowa.
wow. Okay, see, okay, I'm definitely that book in particular. I'm definitely excited to check out and just sit without to share with the family as well.
Yeah. Well, I'll sell you one, but it's everywhere. It's on Amazon. You can get it anywhere
Yeah.
books are sold. It's digital. It's in print. It will be in audio in about 2 weeks. So,
Okay, nice.
yeah.
What's up? So I feel like you're in a position where a lot of writers may come to you to ask for advice,
Yeah,
and
so I do. I run a writers retreat once a year, a destination writers retreat, where we have seasoned writers, small, come and people learn. We share. We learn from them. They learn from us. But the first day is about the business of writing. The first day is about writing craft. The second day is about the business of writing. And I also do ghostwriting and book doctoring and editing to help people. The I started the writers retreat because back in those days when I didn't know what to say, we had all the independent bookstores everywhere. I came to Atlanta many times to Maydo Books and the Shrine of Black Madonna that's here and in Detroit. But had many signings and a lot of the things here, and we would all see each other on the road. So you go away and you do this solitary thing for many, many months, and then you have a blast of you see this person here, you're at this festival with that person, and you learn from each other, and that was really great. But then for a while there was a dearth of that. There were no more book tours on the same level, at least not for us. And then I didn't feel like you used to wander into a bookstore because first you had the independent bookstores, right? And then you had the big box bookstores put a lot of those out of business. And then you had the online retailers putting some of those out of business. So how do you walk into a store and learn about a book?
hmm
Yeah, there's some online things, but it's like a sea. And how do you learn about, like when my first play was optioned for stage, how do you learn about what you should and shouldn't do because you're not meeting that writer who's already done it to say, oh, this happened to me. So I wanted to create that community again. So that's how I got to the writers retreat.
mm, that's beautiful. I love that you not only found ways to create opportunities for yourself and do it in a way that works, but also creating this whole experience, a destination where other people can learn and grow as well. I'm curious, what do you think is like the number one question that people ask you,
Hmm.
or writers in particular?
Well, a lot of them don't want to know how to get published, or they think writing a book is easy. I have a story in me. I got to write a book. What do I have to do? I'm like, write it. And they think that when it first comes out, it's ready. They don't understand the layers, the editing, the getting it into a book. Like book design is a thing. You can't just print it at Kinko's or FedEx Kinko's, as it's now called. There's all the steps, understanding the business. A lot of writers want to write, but they don't necessarily take the time or have the opportunity to understand the business as much. And sometimes that affects your product. You need to know those things to understand timing. Like my book is about the beach. It needed to come out in the spring or early summer to be a beach book. Little things like that. which are important.
Several layers. So writing the book is of course important, but also knowing that that's not going to be the final version.
No.
The release schedule, the book design. One thing I've learned in my journey is I'm definitely not a graphic designer. So
Well, you can hire people if you're doing it yourself, but even if you're not, you need to understand book design. For instance, a major publisher for one of my books, No Girl Needs a Husband 7 Days a Week. I got cover like they let me feel like I had cover approval, right? They sent me the original cover for this book, and it had a black man in a cage with a woman sitting on top. I was like, mm, this is not going to work for me. That's like the Gucci fiasco. They did the sweater that looked like you were wearing blackface. I was like, this is not going to work. You need to understand how those things happen so you can impact your final product, or even understand that you can impact your final product. Because people aren't going to buy the book and say, fill in the blank, publisher did a bad job on this. They're going to say, you as an author did a bad job on this, even if you have multiple layers of editing done by somebody else that has millions of dollars.
you are the face, the creator, everything. It's all you.
Everything is all you.
Mm, love that, man. So you have this retreat. You have a lot of different other opportunities for people to get involved and learn more about
Yes.
growing as a writer. You do right now. You're self-publishing, or is it just
This
this
book
last
is
book?
self published, but I have
Okay,
several others that are not.
right.
So learn as a writer, learn as a storyteller, learn as someone who wants to produce this kind of art because it is art.
Love that.
So the retreat, once a year in October.
Oh, coming up.
Yeah, coming up. We're going to be at the Himalayan Institute in Pennsylvania, the Poconos. The first year we were able to give scholarships. I got a grant that was able to give some partial scholarships to people to come because it's not the most expensive retreat, but it is still, you still got to pay some money. Um, and last year we were in Taos, New Mexico, and it was awesome because so many times we as people, and especially as female writers, we take care of other people. We don't take care of ourselves the same way. And there's such a deep mind body connection. How we feel and what's going on inside of us, whatever we've experienced, affects the art we produce. So that's why I put yoga in the retreat, and we have specialists that come. Many people are writing from a place of trauma, so you're working that out. We saw a lot of tears. We had last year. We had a pastor come and was able to talk to people when they needed to. She was also a life coach. This year we have a life coach as well, who Dr. Dawkins, who helps people. She's an executive life coach, but she helps people find creativity in their life as well to help people work through those things and find out how to harness that in their art.
Mm. Y'all, y'all think Nina Fox, she's got something for everybody. This sounds like an amazing retreat. I would love to experience it one day. Where can everyone find you and just
I'm,
support you, learn more about everything you're doing?
I'm on all the socials, ninafox.com, two X's, dos X como la cerveza. So now you'll never forget two X's like the beer. So ninafox.com, writingsisterssummit.com, ninafox.com, yoga fox. Those are all the same. I'm on IG. I'm Writer Fox, Writer Nina Fox. Facebook. I'm everywhere. YouTube. Nina Fox. So I'm everywhere. Just reach out.
Remember those two X's, y'all.
Two X's.
Reach out. Thank you so much for joining us today, spending your time with us. I really appreciate
Glad
you're
to
doing
be here.
so many amazing things that have such a had such an amazing journey and speak on so much stuff. I have more questions I have to ask you offline as well, but appreciate you joining us. And once again, I want to thank all of our amazing speakers, panelists for being a part of this conversation. Thank you to Auburn Avenue Library, our sponsors, Kindle Direct Publishing, Constellations, Harlequin, Ingram Spark, the Atlanta Writers Club, and Libro FM. Thank you. My name is Walt, and make sure you're following us on Black Writers Weekend, Instagram, Twitter, all the places. Black Writers Weekend. If you have pictures of the event, post it, tag us, use the hashtag Black Writers Weekend. Thank you all for tuning in.